Hi everyone, Lauren here with Lauren Elizabeth Fine Art. In today's video, I'm going to cover some of the frequently asked questions I've been getting for the past 2 years about animal art, especially pertaining to the art supplies that I use for painting my pet portraits and the wildlife paintings that I make. So without further ado, guys, let's get started. Okay, so for question number 1, I have, what are the best brushes for painting animal hair? It's a great question because your brush really can affect how the animal hair turns out. So I have 4 here. I have a skinny detail brush, I have 2 fat flat brushes, and then I have a round brush that's a bit thicker but very pointy. And so I'm holding them right now. This detail brush is great for things like whiskers. I'll put details on eye to make dots. These 2 brushes are great if you turn them at an angle. I'm literally gonna hold it like that. I'm just gonna use that line, that edge, to create the animal hair. That's what I did for Symphony. And then for animals that have a bit thicker hair, like lab doodles, they'll just have clumpy, curly hair. I'll use this brush, and as you can see, it comes to a point. I won't even use the whole brush, I'll use half of it, and I'll just create those curls. And I'll use the thickness of the brush to create the thickness of the hair. So definitely important to have the proper brushes in creating animal hair. Moving on to question number 2. What kind of paper do you use when using watercolor and colored pencil? You know, this took a little while for me to figure out. I would recommend mixed media. This is Strathmore brand. I love this because it works with dry and wet medium. And so this is what I would recommend if you're doing both watercolor and colored pencil. However, if you're just doing watercolor, I really recommend watercolor paper. It looks a lot better. It turns out it doesn't drip. The mixed media isn't dripping and it's not warping if you have it taped down. I mean, this is even meant for watercolor, so I'd really recommend this if you're just doing watercolor. Now, if you're just doing colored pencil, kind of makes sense that you would have your colored pencil paper. So I have mixed media for a variety of different mediums, and then I have colored pencil when I'm just doing colored pencil, and then watercolor for just watercolor. Now, I really recommend cold press watercolor. That's just in my experience. I've used hot press, and I've used a variety of different ones. Strathmore watercolor cold press, acid free, is the one that I highly recommend for doing watercolor animals. Question number 3, can I get away with cheaper brands of acrylic paint? I would say yes. This is not a very expensive brand of paint. This is Master's Touch Acrylic, and it actually has a price. This bottle is $5 and it lasts me for and I do a lot of animal paintings. So for me doing paintings almost every single day, this has lasted me for about a month. And it looks great. I mean, this is quality paint. I painted Symphony with this paint. Now, if you're really wanting to get more pigment, long-lasting paint, I would say Winsor & Newton, and that is definitely more pricey. I buy Winsor & Newton online on Amazon in bulk. I'll just do a huge bulk buy. And I also use this. I really recommend it just for the color. It's just so rich and so pigmented, and it's just great paint. I like the smoothness. It's very milky. Now, but again, you can get away with this cheaper paint. I got this not online. I got this at Hobby Lobby. So the next question is, how do you keep your acrylic paint from drying out? In terms of what I use a paint palette that's glass. Now, you don't have to buy this. This is a glass paint palette, and I love it because I can just reuse it, I can just wash it, and it's a bit of a bother to wash it after every use, but it's not like I have to keep buying. I did that for a while. I was buying the rip-off paint palettes that come in like a pack of 24 or 12. that was just getting a bit too expensive. So this glass paint palette I got from Hobby Lobby for $30. I even had a 40% off discount, which you can use every time you go to Hobby Lobby on one item. And so I would recommend that. But if you don't have any of those, this is great. This is absolutely great. And it's so nice because this is an egg carton, because you can close it and the paint stays dry. So going back to my paint palette, when I use my glass paint palette, I would use saran wrap over top that to keep the paint from drying out. Especially with a baby, I oftentimes have to stop right then and there. I'll have saran wrap next to me, I'll just cover it and then go back to it in 30 minutes or even the next day. I would say using this egg carton where it's closed and the saran wrap will probably keep the paint dry for up to 3 days, give or take. Now, if you don't want to do that and you would like to just have your paint palette open, I also have a water bottle spray. After it dries, it's pretty much water resistant, but after about 3 days, I would say, it can get wet again. And so having this next to you is really helpful for re-wetting the paint. You may even have it in the egg carton and you can just re-wet the paint in that egg carton if it's been more than 3 days. So long story short, saran wrap is helpful, the proper paint palette you don't even have to spend a lot of money on, and then your water bottle spray. What kind of brand of watercolor do you use and recommend? I used to use some really cheap watercolor and I just realized that it wasn't mixing well, it just didn't last very long and it got all dried up and everything. So what I have is this is again, Master's Touch is a brand that I really like from Hobby Lobby. I got this for just $15. It is like, I use this a lot and it barely looks used. Well, maybe the side looks quite used, but I mean, look at how long it's been lasting me. And I will use this as a paint palette, as you can see, or I'll use my glass paint palette to mix the colors. But this is just a fantastic brand, Master's Touch, and this has like all the colors that I would ever want to use. Now, if you don't have that, I also get these little tubes that are also Master's Touch, and they're really nice. I love the colors of these. I have, it came in a pack, and I believe it came in a pack of 30. It was a little bit more expensive. I spent about 40 bucks on the whole pack. And these colors are wonderful. I like how much it contains. I also like how rich they are. Just a very important note, when it comes to watercolor, you really want to get a good brand. You don't want to get cheap watercolor. You can get away with cheap acrylic, but not so much watercolor. So next question is, do you draw your animals out first? Let's try this again. Do you draw your animals out first or do you go straight in with the paint? I don't really have something that I follow. If I feel like drawing, I'll draw it. If I feel like painting it, I will paint it. I've gotten to a point where I feel pretty confident that I can just go straight in and paint, whether it's a pet portrait or if it's a wildlife painting. I would really recommend for beginners and an intermediate level to start with a graphite pencil drawing. I always tell my clients that the better the photo, the better the sketch, the better the painting. So you definitely want to have a really good rough draft outline, if you want to call it that, just so that preps you for a really great final masterpiece in the end. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because as you're painting, you can kind of change it and you can let it evolve. However, I really recommend starting with a graphite pencil sketch to make a wonderful painting. Can you get away with generic brand color pencils, or do you have to buy Prisma color pencils? I mean, I guess you can buy the generic brand. It's just the problem that I had was I would sharpen it and then it would just break right away. I would sharpen it and break. I just wasn't getting anything done. The Prisma color pencils are quite expensive, but the wonderful thing about Prisma is that it is great for like all levels. It's great for beginners because it's a very waxy pencil, and so it really helps you blend. The wonderful thing is you can sharpen it and it's not going to break on you right away. It does last. There's little tools that, like if your pencil gets to like this big, and I'll show you. Let's say you get to a point where your pencil is like sharpened down to like that big. There's this awesome little tool that I got again from Hobby Lobby, and it allows it to last all the way to the end. So that's something that can help you really get the most out of your colored pencils, especially considering how much you're buying. Because you don't want to just buy a pencil and it get to this point and you're like, oh, can't even hold it, I'm not going to use it, and you just throw it out. So definitely use this little tool. Next question, what tape would you recommend for taping down watercolor? So I'm holding a painter's tape. This is something I got from Menards. It's called Painter's Mate Green. I mean, this thing was like 10 bucks for the whole roll. I mean, and there's so much on here, it's gonna last me forever. Painter's tape is great because it's not going to rip or tear your paper when you are pulling the tape off. I wouldn't recommend masking, I wouldn't recommend Gorilla Tape, I wouldn't recommend any other tape but this, because it's really gonna prevent the water from seeping under and or any sort of warping if you're doing watercolor. And this is also very affordable and it's easy to pull off. So painter's tape is always the way to go. The last and final question is, what canvases do you buy and why? I will buy in bulk, no surprise. I can get a pack of 10 canvases at Hobby Lobby. They're literally like $10, and this sale has been going on for like 2 years now. I can just buy in bulk. They come in a variety of different sizes, 16 by 20, 11 by 14, 8 by 10, and I think there's a size bigger. So I recommend buying in bulk, especially canvases. You can buy individual ones, especially if you want some particular size. That might be hard to buy in bulk. Definitely try and go within the dimensions that are more commonly sold. And Hobby Lobby, I'm always going to recommend Hobby Lobby because they have great sales. I've gone over a lot of the common questions that I get. If you have any other questions, especially pertaining to animal art, supplies, or techniques, what have you, just email me. I am just more than happy to help. My email is rose@laurenelizabethfineart.com. Guys, I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.